I'm not going out on a limb when I say Caligo is one of the most interesting characters within Nightreign. The lore of this character is so beautifully written that you honestly can't help but admire it. There are so many connections both to base game Elden Ring and to Dark Souls 3. This character is very, very important, and I hope by the end of the video you see why. A small percentage of the people that watch these videos are actually subscribed. If and only if at the end of the video you have enjoyed, please consider leaving a like and subscribe as it greatly helps the channel. Without any further dilly-dallying, please friends, sit back, relax, grab some succulent, juicy, tender and sensational prawns if you want, and enjoy. Caligo is a dragon, or more specifically a prehistoric dragon, that is said to re-emerge at all the important junctures in the world's history. She sits upon a frigid peak. In the fog she gazes upon the world, its failures and its successes. Interestingly enough, Caligo is also another name for fog, hinting at the abilities of frost and mist that she uses in her boss fight. She isn't just any type of prehistoric dragon, no, she is an ancient dragon. There is one detail that differentiates ancient dragons to drakes, and that is their wings. Ancient dragons have 4 wings. We see this with all of the ancient dragons inside of Elden Ring. From Placidusax to the ancient dragons that guard him, to the ones we see in Shadow of the Erdtree. They are all 4-winged. Baal is technically an ancient dragon, and yet he is deformed with only 2 wings, and his descendants carry on this trend. But the connection to ancient dragons don't just stop at Elden Rings. No, it also connects to Dark Souls. Inside of Dark Souls, the ancient dragons also possess 4 wings. This is seen in the opening cutscene. There's Medea that has 4 wings and was captured by the Lord of Sunlight. And finally we have the ancient dragon that exists inside of Ash Lake. Ancient dragons having 4 wings is a very common theme in both Elden Ring and Dark Souls. And I think Caligo is from both. Which makes a lot of sense considering ding 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 there's Dark Souls bosses inside of Nightreign. As there is both a ton of connections to Dark Souls and Elden Ring, I'm going to first talk about Dark Souls before then getting on to Elden Ring. When I saw Caligo, I couldn't help but think of the Ashes of Ariandel. That DLC was absolutely incredible. But there were some key points that are very similar to Caligo's story. And it makes me so happy there's a connection to Caligo in this DLC. The Ashes of Ariandel, the painted world, is an icy and cold place. So is Caligo. But that's a similarity that can be passed off as coincidence. What cannot be passed off as coincidence is the scream our boy Caligo lets out. It's the same one the father uses at the end of the DLC. The father is a religious figure, father being a title. That's pretty obvious, but what is the religion he's a part of? Well, for starters, we know the religion used to be something that was quite different to what we find it in. The crows talk about a difference, and it's very obvious that Frida is manipulating the father into doing her bidding, to change the order of the painted world and how it ends to something different. Caligo emerges at important junctures in history. The dying of a painted world is definitely one of them. What if, every single time the painted world dies, the power of Caligo is used to revive it in the painting? Caligo is a curious creature that watches and wants to understand. Maybe the painted world is simply an experiment for her desire. I mean, after all, with the blood of the Dark Soul, the painter creates an eternal painted world. The funny part is, we're never actually told how the painted worlds were created before this new painter. We're just told that they were. The icy and cold atmosphere, the scream, there's the fact that Frida uses painted world spells of ice, which is very, very similar to the ones Caligo uses in her boss fight. And then the painting and the important juncture, I believe, are too big of a coincidence. And I think lends credence to the idea that Caligo is at play here, and if only loosely is responsible for the painted world and its inhabitants. If this is the case, a big if, it shows how long Caligo has been around. Caligo isn't just any type of prehistoric dragon. An important thing to mention, I do not believe that Caligo is the same age as Placidusax. I believe she's older. The reason I do believe this is Placidusax's age is said to be prehistoric as well. And yet we hardly get any sort of indication that their empire existed. Of course, in Farum Azula, inside of Elden Ring, there's traces, but in regards to the timeline of Dark Souls 3, with Dark Souls in general, there's not really anything. Prehistoric means prehistory, so there's a big time gap between where Caligo was born and was influenced and stuff, and where Placidusax's empire came about. I'm not exaggerating when I say my jaw dropped when I realised this next part. Ever since the DLC release for Shadow of the Erdtree, I've been convinced that the Jagged Peak was key to understanding where Shadow of the Erdtree fit into the map of Elden Ring, but I was wrong. You see, there's this little thing called the Mountaintop's East Fragment. This fragment talks about an eastern summit which is higher than the Flame Peak. If you go to base game Elden Ring, there is no such mountain. Yet if you place the Jagged Peak to the north of the Flame Peak, it actually makes a lot of sense and everything fits together. But that was without Nightreign. That was without the mountaintop's shifting earth. This is without a doubt the mountaintops of the giants. First of all, it's cold, it's snowy, but then you've also got the classic landmarks like the little guys, aka these little bridges of chains. These are seen everywhere in the mountaintop of the giants, and hell, even leading up to the massive pot that holds the Fell Flame. Not to mention you've got the good old trolls which are also seen in the mountaintops. But what really gets me is the fact inside of base game Elden Ring, there's talk of ice dragons. It's said the ice dragons were destroyed by the fire giants. We learn this from Borealis, which is an ice dragon that is left. How Borealis survived is really up to speculation, but they continue the practice of their people. They use the ice mist, they use ice attacks. Hell, Borealis themselves is coated in ice. This whole situation only gets more interesting when you realise Borealis is the same model that's used as the dragon up on the mountaintops. They're exactly the same. Considering this ice dragon, Borealis drops Borealis' mist, which talks about the defeat of the ice dragons, it's pretty concrete to say that the dragon on the mountaintops and Borealis are the same species. And further, that the shifting earth is in fact the missing part of the mountaintops. Caligo is very directly linked to the mountaintop's shifting earth. You get the mountaintop's shifting earth when you unlock Caligo's boss fight. And considering all the shared themes, it's very obvious that the two are linked. Further proof lies in the fact that this secret peak we talked about earlier is said to be to the north of the Flame Peak. Well, where is Borealis found? To the north of the Flame Peak on an ice lake. Coincidink? Absolutely not. I do not believe this is a coincidence. I find the connection to base game very, very interesting. I mean, we're never given more than literally this one item description on the ice dragons. Ice dragons which are most likely the children of Caligo. Obviously just a thought, but I think it's quite likely. I think it's very fair to say that Caligo was the top dragon of this era. After much debating, I've come to the conclusion that Caligo was most likely the Elden Lord of her age. Inside of her boss arena, she has this massive eye in the background. Each dynasty has their own god and Elden Lord. For example, with the Golden Order, you've got Marika, who's the god, and then Radagon, who's the Elden Lord, and before him, Horaloo. With Ranni's dynasty in the end of the Age of Stars, she's the god, and we are the Elden Lord. In Placidusax's age, he was the Elden Lord, and he had a mysterious god. I don't see why it should be any different with Caligo's dynasty. Each of the outer gods represents something in the environment. The Fell God's flame, the Greater Will's order, the Scarlet Rot outer god is rot and decay, the Frenzied Flame is chaos, and so on and so on. But there is not one ice or water outer god out there that we're told about. Which ding 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 is what Caligo uses. I think it's very likely this is what is in the background. It would also explain how Caligo possesses these abilities that are so unique. It's really hard to understand and come to a conclusion on the full story, but personally I'm convinced that this eye is the god of Caligo's age. Further proof that Caligo and this eye are divinity comes in one of the attacks. The Ice Ring is one of the most interesting attacks I've ever seen in one of FromSoftware's games. This is for a few reasons. First of all, it's fucking awesome. Secondly, the roar that we talked about earlier. Thirdly, you'll actually see, if you look above, it's the outline of an eye. What is seen in the background of this boss arena? Another eye. Caligo sits in the pupil of this makeshift semi-eye, symbolising the symbiotic relationship that exists between God and Elden Lord, aka Caligo and her god. When the ice eye collapses, it turns into the branches of the divine tree that pops up at the end of every day cycle. And it isn't just slightly similar, it's virtually identical, further proving the idea that there is divinity connections within Caligo and this eye. What I find even more interesting is that some data miners have actually found out that Caligo was originally cut content for the base game. It's got a different code to the ones in Nightreign, and is similar to a missing asset inside a base game, suggesting that the whole story of the ice dragons was going to be expanded upon, but never was. It's very curious, and it makes you think just maybe Nightreign has been in the pipeline longer than we thought. Virtually every single Night Lord has an eye in their background, and yet Caligo's is different. This motherfucker just has a full-on eyeball going hog wild in the background. The answer to that question can be seen in her item description, where it talks about her eye gazing upon the land. Realistically speaking, how in some foggy mist at the top of some mountain can she see the whole world? It's really unrealistic. I know this is Elden Ring, a fantasy game, but still. It'd be very strange unless there was some other way that she was able to view the world. I believe this way of viewing is through the aforementioned god, aka the eye that we talked about earlier in the video. But Gecko, it says her eye inside the item description. Well, it doesn't exactly clarify, does it? It doesn't say, her eyeball gazed down upon the land. It says her eye. Because of the god and Elden Lord situation, I really do believe that it's the god that is looking down on the land with this massive eye and reporting back to Caligo. Elden Lords and gods are married together, so it makes sense that there either be a possessive name like her eye, or because they're so closely knit together and they're so close because of their shared link. Caligo's will is the eye's will, and the eye's will is Caligo's will. That's just a theory though. I was using the cheat engine to go look at the eye, and I realised, wait a fucking minute, wait. Is that humanity? If you look at the slit, it looks eerily similar to humanity from Dark Souls. Ba-dum. Dark Souls' humanity also looks very similar to Grace. It's all connected, and it brings up a lot of questions on just what this eye is. Remember how we were talking about the painted world? Well, don't you think it's a bit too much of a coincidence that Caligo just has an eye lying around that's got the pupil with humanity in it? The dark soul of man is humanity. Humanity is the very essence of dark. If humanity / the dark soul is needed to create an eternal painted world, and if Caligo is sort of responsible for the painted world, then it makes sense why Caligo would have the missing piece inside her very own realm. For as we talked about, it's unlikely that she'd want a perfect eternal world. I can't be the only one that can see the similarity between this and Marika. Both Marika and Caligo took away something that was integral for the order and the survival of their people. Caligo didn't do something with the dark soul of man, and Marika took away death from the Elden Ring. I really like when FromSoftware do connections because they do it so well. On the topic of ice mists and borealis ice mists, the Zamor ice storm is eerily similar to what we see with both Caligo and with the ice dragon. We also know that the Zamor Knights fought against the fire giants, and as we talked about, the fire giants killed the ice dragons and shooed them away from the mountaintops. Perhaps this was a lot more literal, as we actually can't see Caligo's mountain inside of base game Elden Ring. How they did this, fuck knows, but they seem to have done it. And it makes me wonder just what else do we not know about the fire giant civilization. As we've talked about many times in this video, Caligo comes around at important junctures in history. Who else also comes about at important junctures in history? The Oracles. The Oracles are from an ancient dynasty, and they herald the new age or a new god. They know it's coming, and they signal it with their trumpets. This emergence at these important junctures is very similar to Caligo, but the connection doesn't end there. Another connection lies in the bubbles. Bubbles are air that is enclosed by a thin layer of water. The oracles use these in their attacks. Now what does Caligo use? Caligo uses ice. Ice comes about when you freeze water. You can do this at home, and I'm pretty sure you probably have. Both the bubbles and the ice are intrinsically linked together. They are both water. Then when you consider the junctions that we talked about earlier, I know it's a bit of a stretch, but we don't know the dynasty the oracles are from. We just have literally no idea. So it would make sense if this is where they were from. Sadly everyone, that is the end of the video. If you did enjoy, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. If there was anything you think I missed, or anything you think I didn't do right in this video, let me know down below. I'm genuinely open to constructive criticism, and I do want to hear all of your opinions. I'm not going to ramble on anymore. Please friends, don't you dare go hollow, and may you find your worth in the waking world. See you in the next one, and goodbye.